where 8 is the maximum that a student can have, because 9 is for the professor and 10 is for God. Welcome to the very first episode of our podcast, International UAB, where we are going to talk about internationalization of higher education. Whether you are a student that is eager to have an international educational experience, or a researcher or an academic that wants to broaden his or her horizon, this is the place for you to talk about international education, to share ideas, to find things about the opportunities that are created for you, and it's where our experience as partners throughout Europe and the world comes together to share that knowledge and that experience. We'll, of course, first and foremost introduce our university, Decembrie 1918 University of Alba, Iulia, a public institution in the heart of Romania, in Transylvania, founded in 1991. A university that is actually in the center of Alba Iulia's cultural heritage. Our history is more than 2,000 years old, and we are also the place where modern Romania has been born in 1918 on December the 1st. But we are also embracing the ever-evolving landscape of global education and invest our efforts into becoming an international university. That being said, we are, since December 2023, part of a European-wide consortium, European University for Academic Continuing Education, a consortium that brings together universities from the west of Europe to the east, from the north to the south. We actually have started by started with the idea that we are going to revolutionize higher education in the sense that we are going to open education and all that is included in university services to everyone, to students that are just starting their studies, to the very old people that consider education as a life journey, not something that is done in just a few years. And of course, in doing that, we are also following the strategies of the European Union in trying to ensure that everyone has the skilling, the upskilling, or the reskilling that they need to integrate easily on the global jobs market, and to be able to face all these technological trends and technological transformation. But of course, we are, at least in this very first edition, are going to focus on internationalization of higher education. What does it mean? How does it help you? And that's because, you might just be a young person that wants to broaden his or her horizon. You might just want to make sure that you meet diverse people, that your educational experience is impacted by diversity, other cultures, other ways of learning and teaching, and internationalization is a resource for universities to do that. In terms of staff, academic staff, researchers, those that are focused on having an international experience is actually brings that innovative drive that is global, and for universities as institutions, what internationalization does is actually improve quality of education, the visibility of that institution in the world. It contributes to the sustainable development of universities, but also academic excellence. And that's why we choose to have this first conversation together with two representatives from universities in EU.ACE, in European University for Academic Continuing Education. Actually, the person that has been a driving force behind this consortium and behind this project, and that is Anna Maria Simionovic, head of Service Center for International Relations at the University for Continuing Education in Krems, Austria, and Beatriz Jimenez Luengo, who is Director for International Strategic Projects at CEU University in Spain. So, first and foremost, hi to both of you.
Good morning.
Bună ziua, Ana Maria. Buenos dias, Beatriz. Actually, Ana Maria is from Romania, from very close to Alba, Iulia, in Sibiu. Thank you both for agreeing to be part of this first edition of our podcast. And before we start talking about internationalization and strategies and policies and so on and so forth, I would like for you both to be a bit personal. And when I say that, I mean both of you had international education. Yeah, so you both had the possibility to study in your countries of origin, but also in universities or high schools or whatever abroad. Can you both please tell me how that changed your perspective of education in general, and what did it do for you in your professional becoming, let's say?
Who starts?
Anna, you go.
I started already.
Yeah.
Bună dimineața, good morning. Well, having an education on 2 continents and in 3 countries, I guess it showed me that being local might at the same time imply remaining a bit provincial, to be a bit harsh. So remaining in the place that you are born for your whole life has a lot of qualities, of course. But at the same time, moving from that place to another system of education and yet to another system of education showed me personally, or taught me personally, that I need to be more open, I need to be more flexible, that there is a variety of ways to teach, that there are a variety of ways to learn, that standing in front of a classroom, which might be standard in one country, is replaced by learning by doing in another country, on another continent. That language is at the very bottom of education, of course. If you don't understand the language that you're being taught in, if you don't understand the language that your peers are speaking in, you become isolated. So teaching languages, whether you remain at home or go abroad, should be a priority for everybody. And perhaps teaching some sort of geography combined with intercultural skills would also be a plus for everybody if they would have to move abroad, because if you learn, about the world in geography based on a map, and learn about cultures based on a book, but you don't combine the two in terms of examples, that might be too little. If you really end up in a country where people might seem that they're friendly, but or you might interpret it as friendliness from the point of view that you're coming from, but then at the end you realize this is distancing. So
Okay.
I guess this is what I can say for me for now.
Yeah. Beatrice, you have studied in the United Kingdom, right? As an Erasmus exchange student.
Yeah, in my case, coming from Spain, I studied in the UK as an Erasmus student, and it was actually quite deliberate because I waited until my last year of my studies to go abroad, because that year is when finally my university signed an agreement with two universities in the UK, and there were 4 spots to go abroad to the UK. And I wanted really badly to go do an exchange in an English-speaking country, because that was my second language. I studied languages, translation, interpreting. And you see where I can tell that agreements are important now that we work in international relations. But yeah, I can say that the systems are completely different from Spain and the UK. And that's actually quite good for some students, because when you come from a system in which you are completely taught in an ancient Roman way that the professor delivers everything and you memorize everything and go to the final exam, and then you face a complete different system, such as the UK, where you are supposed to read on your own, you're supposed to write essays and work with deadlines that look like they are quite, long, and you have quite some time, but you are supposed to manage your time. That is something that for some students, at least coming from Spain, was struggling, because we were not aware that we were supposed to manage our own time. So in my case, it was very beneficial, because as I said, I was studying translation, and I went to a classroom in which I suddenly knew a lot, because we were doing reverse translation for them. That meant that at that time I was a native speaker, and I was not aware of that. I was not used to that, because you can imagine then in my direct translation classrooms, I was like at the very end, because they were doing direct translations. But that helped me a lot to learn about the language, because, you learn the most when you are the one in the room that knows the least. So that really helped me get to know about the language and the culture. Also, there was a very important experience for me working abroad. When I moved to Portugal, once I finished my studies, I moved to Portugal to work. But again, I worked in a higher education institution, so I was close to education. And again, that was quite challenging to see that for some students, the way of studying was totally different than it was in Spain. Like, for instance, the way that they deliver the grades in Portugal is quite funny, because you can see a student that has an 18 out of 20, and that is the maximum they can achieve, because they say that 19 is for the professor and 20 is for God. So imagine a student from Spain coming and saying, "Oh, but I'm used to having 10s out of 10. How come I never get a 20? That is an example to see how it can change, even from countries that are so close and that you might think that they are so similar. And then you face things that completely surprise you. So yeah, I think that's a good start.
Yeah, it is. We still have professors here in Romania that have the same mindset, where 8 is the maximum that a student can have, because 9 is for the professor and 10 is for God. Anyway, yeah, starting from the point that Anna Maria has made, and what you've pointed out, the world is full of possibilities, and international education is the key to unlock those possibilities for young people. But I mean, very subtly, you both also pointed out some of the shocks, cultural shocks that an international student might have, or challenges that are there. So how did you get past them, or maybe for you those cultural shocks or those challenges were not very big, but earlier education and the formal one, integrating in a different academic environment, adapting your mindset to different mindsets that young people in your circle or in your classroom has, is difficult. So if you had that experience, how did you move past it? Or how to just make it more practical for our conversation? Did the university that you've studied in, or the institution that you've studied in abroad, help you surpass those challenges?
Okay, I'll start again. Since I have to explain how my background looks like. I think in order I didn't go on Erasmus. I was moved from Romania to Austria by my parents, then from Austria to Canada by my parents, and then I came back to Austria by myself. So this is I did some school in Romania, then some school in Austria. Then my high school diploma is from Canada. I did some studying in Canada, and then I finished my studying in Austria. And even when I came back to Austria, so knowing this country, I had this kind of shock, of course. I think most people would lie if they would say, oh no, I transitioned from Romania to even, something very close to Romania, I don't know, or from Spain to Portugal. Of course, you're outside your usual everyday life. You're outside your family, or away from your family, and your friends, if you're young, who are very, very important, more important than your family. And you're confronted by a new language, by a new culture, and perhaps all kinds of other things that you have never experienced before. And most shocks, in my experience, so I can give you an example. For example, I came to Austria to the university after not being here for 6 years and being used to the Canadian system in the meantime. And I was expecting servicing. I went to the student affairs office and wanted to immatriculate. And Austria is not a service-oriented country. So it was a guy was sitting on his throne at the back of his desk, and I was missing something, and he sent me away. And my first reaction as a 23-year-old was to go outside and cry. So, of course, you're disappointed. Nobody's helping you. You feel at 23, you're still full of power and energy, but you're somehow feeling lost if a guy in a position of authority tells you, well, you're not smart enough to bring me everything away. So, of course, the first reaction was to go outside and cry, but then the second reaction was, well, let's see what's missing and try to tap as many resources as possible. And in this case, at that time, there weren't international offices as we know them in Austria. There was an office, at the time it was called like Office for Foreigners, where you could go as a student, but also as staff, and talk to somebody. And it was at the end of the summer, so it was quite empty at university, but I somehow managed to find this place, which was also very hard to find. Many buildings, the campus was huge. And I went there, and this very, very, very nice guy again listened to me. And I told him what was my problem. Well, I came as a free mover. I don't have a sending institution behind me that I can rely on. The guy at Student Affairs didn't accept my papers that I brought to him. This is what I think I should do in order to have a complete set of papers. Also, I asked him about lodging and how can I find accommodation, and told him a little bit about my life. And this guy sat with me for about an hour and a half, and just listened to me. But this was helpful enough. I mean, he didn't call the other guy to tell him, hey, come on, help her, or he didn't do anything for me. He just listened to me and then sort of gave me the energy that I needed to go and do everything on my own that was still missing. So yes, I had the support of this university, whereby I'm not sure if it was, so I don't think it was a formalized system at the time. I think it was just this individual guy who understood the hardship of being new or foreign in a new place, and who understood how to go about this. And to end because the funny thing is that about 20 years later, no, must have been longer, I became the head or director of the Service Center for International Relations at my university, and all the universities in Austria have common meetings depending on the unit that they're in. So all the international offices of the public universities in Austria meet 3 times a year and to discuss things that they're working on in order not to be isolated as a university. And I entered this room, and one of the first people that I see is this guy, because in the meantime he's also the head of the international office at the university that I studied at. And I went to him, I said who I was. He couldn't remember me, but it became a running gag in this round of international offices that I was one of the students that he helped. And look what happened with me. So perhaps he was some sort of even inspiration in my choice of job.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story, but it's one that kind of speaks to the truth of most international relations officers. You have to have a certain passion in offering help and support and comfort to those that are foreign. I mean, you could not do this type of work, and we'll talk more later about what that entails, without a passion to help and to listen to the other people. That is your experience with challenges, and who helped you if you needed help.
Well, in my case, I went to the University of Hull, and cheers to them because they had almost everything really organized from a certain point of looking at it. So, for instance, they had a huge campus in the UK, and they had different lines in which you could just go and register for your GPs, your general practitioner, your doctor, or you could register for the courses and so on. So all those things were set. But I remember that, for instance, I did not get to stay in the house of residence. That for those who have been in the UK, you know that is very important because you're kind of on campus. And I had to go to a rental place. And at some point, my landlord decided to sell the house with the students in it. And I was like, am I being sold? And as Ana Maria was saying, I was quite young. I was 21 at the time. And of course, I was studying to be a sworn translator. So I had that law, and I thought I knew a lot and I could read contracts and so on. So I went to see the landlord and say, so what's going on? Are we getting evicted? What is the problem? And yeah, that was a huge shock, especially because they entered in the house to show the place without prior warning and so on. So we were quite outraged about our rights and so on. But in the end, everything went okay. I think the main problem for us, and for me in particular, would be to mingle with the national student. Because in the UK, that's quite hard. Usually, there are a lot of things for international students, and we would go abroad with the international students, and we would go out with international students. And I think that's also a problem that students face here in Spain at some point. And that's something that I pick up from my time as an exchange student, and I'm always trying to see if we can find ways for them to mix and students to really find the value of making friendships on your own country, of people who come with a different perspective and from different places. So in my case, I studied Chinese in the UK. I'm not ashamed of saying that. I thought that my university did not offer a Chinese course, and so that was my chance. And it was the regular, because again, they were in a classroom in which they knew exactly the same as I did, nothing, because it was A1 Chinese. And the professor was Chinese, so we were all the same level, and it was easier for me to talk to them because I was the only foreigner student there, and we were all learning Chinese. I must say that to me that was helpful, because at the same time, I think language sometimes is a barrier for some students. We have some students here, for instance, that come from Taiwan, and sometimes you don't know if the problem that they have is linguistic or if it's cultural. So sometimes you need to really tell those things apart. But yeah, besides that, I can remember speaking about people and persons that in the end make the difference. When I moved to Portugal, that was to work. But it was my first working experience abroad, and paperwork was crazy, as you can imagine. It was the same as here, as it is in Spain. I know now that. But there was a catch-22 situation. I remember I needed a paper to go to the bank and a bank account open to go get that paper. And nobody wanted to help me because I still needed that requisite before. And I remember the woman in the bank looked at me and said, "Oh, don't worry, little girl, I will help you. So that's okay. The other office is right there. You can go. I will give you a paper saying that in case you get that paper, we will be able to give you that." And that woman was an old lady who probably had never been abroad, or maybe on holiday, but probably had never studied abroad. And at the same time, I think she had that sort of empathy that we all share, that she saw that there was a person in trouble that really needed to get that sorted and had no other chance of doing it without her help. And she did that because she could have probably had a problem at her job because of helping me, but she did it anyway. So I think that's something that we can all tell, that people who go one step farther to help others, that sort of empathy, I think it's something that goes through everyone who works in international relations, or that at least are passionate about this.
Yeah, that's very true. I want to focus on one more thing that is kind of personal for each of us, because both the stories that you've shared are inspirational and more or less talk about people in everyday situation, not necessarily in international settings, but they are inspiring because it's what we do, what we have to do daily. But a last thing that I would like to focus on personally is you both are in very important positions in your institutions, working with international students, international partnerships, building cooperation in one way or another, focusing on international projects that answer both the needs of research and quality education in your universities. I would like to kind of to ask you if to think about what drove you to get where you are. Was it your dream to do what you're doing now? Was it I don't know, your passion? Was it chance that got you where you are? And I would start with you because your background actually is very different from mine and the background of Beatrice. We are coming from humanities background, languages and history and so on, but your background is totally different. And you can share it with us directly.
Okay. I was going to give the floor to Beatrice, so I'm not first again, but okay. Yeah, my background. I'm actually an architect by profession. So I studied architecture. I practiced architecture. At some point, I went back to school and got a doctorate in something that's more in the direction of humanities, architectural theory and history. But yes, what does it have? What does this have to do with international relations? At first sight, nothing. And perhaps I mean, I like to tell stories, so I'm going to tell you a story again.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's true or not, but if I was to write my, biography at some point and the autobiography at some point and say, how did I get to the place where I am? I think I would say this is who I am from the beginning. And it's a very funny, I mean, growing up in Romania, I was 10 years old in 89 when Romania broke down or broke open, or and it was not like we were very it was not a group of people that we were not the same. We were not we were not local. We were moving the whole time from Sibiu to Bucharest, which is also a big difference in terms of how the people are. And in terms of ethnicity, we had in front of our building, we had a building of Roma. When we went to the countryside, we were surrounded by peasants. My grandparents were director, or my grandparent was my grandfather was a director of a gymnasium. So it was all these kinds of different kind of people that I, as a child, had the feeling I had to balance all the time, and I loved it from the beginning. But this also put me in a very weird position in terms of how my parents saw me, because we were, those of you who know how Romania was before 89, we were not really supposed to carry anything from inside of the household to the outside of the household, because it could cause danger to the parents or to the grandparents. So we were not really supposed to talk to other kids in our age about what's happening in private. Actually, the word private, which is very interesting, came so I came to this much later, didn't exist. Privacy. There was no privacy or private, but whatever. So I was trying to have these relations with Roma kids, with peasants kids, with kids from our own block where we lived, with the kids from Sibiu, with at the same time with all those grown-ups that came from all those different places. And my parents told me all throughout, you're too naive. Don't do that. You're too friendly to those. You're too friendly to those. Could put you in danger. This could put us in danger. Like a big paranoia. And I thought, okay, there's something wrong with me. I must, either they adopted me or there's something bigger that's wrong with me. But in the end, this is what brought me to throughout my life to where I am at a certain point in my life, because this is what I guess this is my talent. This is what I really like to do. I'm a bit of a monkey, so I can integrate very fast. Give me a German, I'll be a German within minutes. Give me a Spanish person, I'll be a Spanish person within seconds. So this helps too. But I have this belief that inside of us, there, as humans, there's even in the darkest times and in the meanest person, there must be something that I can learn from. So perhaps this is where it starts. It's not just that I want to be nice and I want to be, but I want to learn. I want to understand, and I'm a very curious person, and I believe in social interaction and networks as something that completely enriches my life. And now with 46, I can say, no, my parents were wrong.
Yeah.
They were zeros and ones, computer programmers, and they didn't understand that the very fabric of what holds the world together lies in social relations and in trying to understand what makes me different from the other person and where can I find something that brings us together in the end.
I very much love that. I mean, it's so true in what we are doing. So I love that. Beatrice?
Well, that's a very nice story, Ana Maria. I didn't know about the free 89 in Romania. We need to talk about that more in private with a coffee, because now I'm all curious about it. Especially, when linguistics comes in the equation, I get extra curious. Well, in my case, my family is pretty normal, Spanish-speaking family. Nobody speaks another language. My father kind of spoke English at some point in his life, mostly because they come from the south of Spain. And as you can imagine, that is probably the British and Dutch people. And I remember that when I was 4, 5, my best friend was British, because the pub that was close to my mom's store was from a British family. And the mom did not speak a word of Spanish. And she used to take us to the beach. And I remember I understood that lady, but I couldn't speak a word. And I was so outraged because of that. I was 4 or 5 at the time. And I still remember the feeling of not being able to communicate because, of course, my friend spoke Spanish as well, so I could speak with her. And I understood all the other Brits that were around us that were kids, but I could not speak a word. So every time she left, I had nobody to communicate to, and we were kind of playing around, but I couldn't speak. And I think that at some point in my life, my family moved to the center of Spain, and you can imagine that completely went out of the equation. I was in a complete Spanish-speaking setting, and I was doing sciences in high school, and I had to choose what I wanted to study. And then I went to translation because I really liked languages. That was sort of my talent. I am good at learning languages, and I really like linguistics. But I thought it was language that I liked, and that was it. I remember I finished my undergraduate degree, and I was doing a master's in teaching English, and I was an English teacher. And then the opportunity came, and I had to move to Portugal. At that time, I did not speak Portuguese. I had been learning on my own, but I had never spoken to anyone because I was so afraid I was going to make a mistake. I remember the first time I went to an interview, the person who was talking to me would not believe that was my first time speaking outside of a family environment, because they were like, but you must be speaking for some time. Well, in the end, I got the job, and it was an international office. And I was working as a translator because they were doing an Erasmus Mundus project with Latin America. Mm-hmm. So obviously it was important to speak Spanish, but also there were some European parts. So I was the person who could speak the 3 languages. Well, after the translation contract was over, they invited me to stay. And it was by chance that I discovered that I really, really liked that job. After working in that university, I started working in another university in Portugal. And then I have been working in two other institutions here in Spain. So, yeah, I think it was by chance that I discovered this job.
By chance, but you were also kind of drawn to that because of your background in languages, because of your inclination in meeting people from other cultures, and your passion about that. Anyway, what we've talked about already brings us to something that for me is fundamental, and I would hope, and this is one of the reasons that we are doing this podcast. I hope that everybody gets to understand it, how important internationalization for a university is. And that's because, and I always say this to everybody that wants to listen to me, internationalization is actually a resource. I mean, it's a resource that will ensure the sustainable development of institutions, and that ensures academic excellence. But I want to go straight to the point and ask you about how do you define internationalization of higher education? We'll start with Beatrice. Okay, Anna?
Well, that's a tough question because it's very broad.
Yeah.
I will pick up on an example. When I started working at TEU, the first project that I had worked on was working on an award that we finally received in 2023, that is the Sequint Seal of Excellence. It's a certificate of quality in internationalization. And I remember that I was asking myself this question. So what is internationalization? I mean, I know a lot about this, but how can I put this into words? This is so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get that, you had to write, as many other words and seals of excellence, you have to do a report, a self-report. And I remember I was reading the instructions about how to get it done. And I agreed so much because it was written in such a way that it explained to you what is internationalization for you. So how are you using internationalization for the purpose of your institution? I can say that to me, internationalization, it's a door open to the world, and then you can pick what best suits the purpose of your institution. It's a source of richness. So in our case, I think internationalization, it's a way of getting a very well-known institution in Spain up to speed and to receive a lot of richness from other partners and learning how to do new things. So that's, for instance, what we are doing in the alliance that we are right now. We are learning much more about continuing education, which is something that we were not very, very much into doing before. I think internationalization is very important to overcome the challenges that countries and institutions face. For instance, in Spain, we have a huge demographic problem, and I think that can be the solution for many institutions to receive others, and also for the country, because when you are training individuals in your institutions and they are already set and they are learning how your system works and they are receiving education, they can be of much more use to the country and they can really help you grow. So yes, I think internationalization is what you need it to be at some point. So it's a very broad answer, but I think it's the best one I can give you.
Yeah, I mean, I just last week I saw a small news report on CNN and it was about the demographic problem that Spain has. And it was reported that until 2050, Spain needs 20 million immigrants in order for it to have the pension system and the social network that Spain has sustainable. In a country that is about 48 million right now inhabitants, 20 million immigrants, if you do not offer them education, if you do not offer them the necessary services to integrate and adapt in your society, that's an impossible task, an impossible undertaking. So even if broad, your definition is right on point, because you see, you drew the line of where the importance of internationalization falls. Everyday life and everyday challenges, you know? Anna.
Yeah, so thank you for giving me the time to think about this time. So
you do it for many, many years. I mean, you wrote, I don't know, 2, 3 internationalization strategies, so you don't have to think about it.
I opened it up because I opened up the most recent one because so coming from architecture, so first practicing architecture and then teaching architecture, I was always surrounded by internationalization. I forgot to say that before. I ended up always in these positions where they asked me to be some sort of international coordinator or to organize excursions or field trips throughout the world. And for me, it made complete sense. Yeah, you have to move in order to be so curious and learn things about yourself and your profession. But I never thought about the definition of internationalization until I came to University for Continuing Education, Thames, because here the task was built up an international office, not for what you would call regular students, but for adult students. So our students are on average 40 years old, and they have a job or are just taking a leave from their job, but they're professionals. They have worked for a long time. They usually have a family. And, what is internationalization, or what I thought superficially was internationalization before, which used to be mobility, send students and receive students, send staff, receive staff, do some cooperative projects in education, but also in research. This somehow was overthrown at the moment where I came here and I realized I have to deal with 40 years olds. What to do with them? How do you internationalize them? How to internationalize the institution? And after some time, I was asked to write an internationalization strategy, of course, also, and based on a lot of surveys, talks with the rest of the university, because I was quite new, so I had to get to know the university before I write anything for it. I realized that in the end, what we are trying to do here, and I'm going to quote, is that we should aim to ensure, so internationalization should aim to ensure that all interested individuals, and that, regardless of their social and economic background, have access to quality education while they are being made aware of the world's cultural heritage and its diversity, as well as of the associated global responsibility. So this is the sentence that I came up at that time with my rectorate, with my university, in order to describe what we're trying to do here in terms of internationalization. So I think concretely what it means is that serving society with continuing education means these individuals that study here pretty much upskill or reskill themselves. Now, there is no job left anymore where you don't have to deal with either another culture, another language, or with the world as a whole anymore. Even if I'm a doctor in Law Austria, where my university is based, if I work in the hospital, I will have, or if I'm a nurse, I will have patients who come from another place, who have a different sort of awareness about their body, for example, than an Austrian person does. Even if I work in an architect's office and I just draw, at some point I'm going to have to read a contract or write a contract. And these contracts that are international, so between a firm in, let's say, Dubai and a firm in Vienna, they require a lot of intercultural knowledge, a lot of political knowledge, a lot of skills that are not, they don't grow on a field if you just sit in Law Austria and learn Law Austria. So I think this is the idea behind what we're trying to do. Have curricula that convey this kind of message. Hey, we are working in a global world. We're living in a global world. We're surrounded by people who are a bit different than us. And if we don't open up, if we don't try to understand or be aware, we don't have to always understand this difference, but be aware of the difference. You may not succeed, you may fail. And at the same time, we have to take care about, keeping this world like it is. And for this, you should do the same. Be aware of differences and do not destroy them, because otherwise the world is going to end. And with this dark thought, I will hand back over.
Well, it's not necessarily a dark thought, but and we will get to talk about the challenges and the criticism that internationalization is bringing from different aspects of life, and they are not dark. They are there. For instance, this is something that's very important and that you pointed out. Internationalization is not only about mobility and exchanges and so on. It's about globalizing curriculum, globalizing educational content. I mean, offering an open-minded education to your students wherever you may teach them. I mean, it's very important to I don't know, to teach accounting so that your students can do accounting in Spain, in Austria, in the United Kingdom, and so on and so forth. You can internationalize your physics course by integrating a bit of cultural knowledge into that. So yeah, it's very important to do that. But from that, there is this criticism. Okay, if we just teach international content, where is the local culture or the local contribution? We tend to maybe standardize everything and offer our courses for an international audience. But where will Alba Iulia's cultural heritage find itself into that? That's one of the criticism, or as you said, the dark points of internationalization. Yeah, of course. It's a conversation, Anna.
If we talk about internationalization of curricula, that doesn't mean that every single aspect of the curriculum is international. And of course, you can still have the local aspects and the regional aspects. And what I forgot to also add is, of course, our students also go abroad, just not all of them. So we had to, or not most of them. That's why we had to come up with some other features, which in internationalization language are called internationalization at home. Mm-hmm. So, for example, internationalization of curricula, or having international students visit us instead of our students going abroad, and having international staff visit us instead of going abroad. But yeah, the local aspects, the regional aspects, they're here. They need to stay. They need to to standardize and make everything equal. I think this should not be the goal of internationalization. The goal of internationalization should be to perceive the differences in a way that is peaceful. You're different from me, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to attack your country or your house or your cultural heritage or destroy you as a person.
Yeah, so as a mean to combat that possible criticism is for us to point out exactly what you did. I mean, when we talk about internationalization, we talk about integrating an intercultural component in our education. And that means understanding diversity, that means bringing in different points of view, and most of all, that means balance, and that's, of course, against standards. Beatrice, you work in a private university. Both me and Anna, we are working in public institutions. The way that, or the behavior of public institutions versus private institutions is, of course, different. But when it comes to a private university, what do you think that are the key drivers of internationalization for your university, or more general, if you want to speak about that as well, for Spain?
Well, in Spain in particular, there are many new universities. Like the market is getting overcrowded with new universities because the funds are opening new universities every time. So in our case, we are an old university. We were founded in 1933. We became 90 years old recently with a huge party about it. But we have a very rooted set of values. So in our case, it's not about profit. We are actually a non-for-profit organization. It's about becoming relevant and keeping our relevance, because this is an institution that has been, as I said, in Spain for a long time, and we are actually opening new universities within the country. We recently opened the fourth university in the foundation that owns the 4 universities. And for us, internationalization is, as I said, important, the challenges of the country, that some of them, as I already spoke about, are demographics. But also it's important because we want to continue being relevant for our own students. Because as you were saying, becoming aware of the differences and giving the Spanish students, traditional Spanish students that would come to our university, this sense of internationalization and this feeling that the other one is different, but it's okay, I'm not uncomfortable with it, or maybe if I am, I'm able to overcome this. That's key. So in our case, for instance, the internationalization strategy is separated within 3 different groups. We have the internationalization at home, the internationalization of going abroad, and also we have all the programs that give students a double degree. So that is also another value for the student, receiving another certificate from another institution, and also having colleagues that come from other parts of the world. So that, I think that's why internationalization for us is important, and I would probably extrapolate that to all the other private universities. In our case, we are very lucky because the management saw that from the beginning, and internationalization is one of the 5 X's of the strategic plan 2022, I think, until 2027. So we still have 2 more years of internationalization plan. But I think it's a way of enriching the whole university. And as Maria was saying before, I think it's important that we include internationalization also within the institution. So in your case, I can totally see why you had to evaluate and elaborate a new sort of internationalization strategy for people who obviously have family ties, are not so able to travel for so long periods of time. In our case, even if the age of our students, the average age is lower, I think we also conceived that internationalization was important also at the first stages. So for instance, during the first year of the undergraduate, when they cannot travel abroad, we thought that internationalization at home was important because at that point they could learn more things about others before they would actually go. And then of course the shock would be lower or smaller. So yeah, I think those two types of internationalization combine very well.
Yes, they do. We are going to take a break, guys. Okay. We are going to take a 10-minute break. Okay, so we are back, and as I said before, we are continuing to talk about a bit of criticism that is addressed to internationalization policies, and that is the fact that in a way education is being commercialized. It's viewed as a service to be sold. There are more and more universities that do that. So how can we mitigate those risks, and how can we push back against that criticism?
I start with my experience from Canada, because I don't think this is a new thing that education is being commercialized. When I studied in Canada, which started in 1998, so this was the year that I started my bachelor studies, to do a bachelor, you had to pay around 4,000 Canadian dollars per semester. So coming from Austria, where education was free at the time, and from Romania, where education was, nai carte, nai parte. So if you don't have education, you cannot be part of anything. So for me, it was clear that education is a common good and it's not something to be sold. This was a bit of a shock, of course. That this trend is spreading out, and that there is also a secondary trend of trying to attract international paying students. This is something that is happening. How to combat it? This is not a question for international offices. I mean, what international offices can do is try to go to their higher management, upper management offices and try to explain the fact that paying international students may not be the ones who in their home countries have gotten into university, and that they're trying to buy themselves an education somewhere else. In how far we can act as an international office, otherwise, I'm not sure. And in terms of continuing education, this in Austria has been and will be probably, I don't think this will change, also affiliated with tuition. You will not be able to do continuing education or to reskill or upskill without paying for it. The good thing about this is that when we have incoming students, we don't ask them for tuition, of course. This is something that also Erasmus is giving us as a condition. So if you do a student exchange, do not ask them for tuition at the university that you send them to, so that at the receiving institution. But in how far in a global economy that bases on capitalism and on money and on growth and on this oxymoron of sustainable development. I mean, how can you sustain and develop at the same time? There is a question for me personally in how far an international office can stand up and say, well, let's not sell it anymore. The consequence for international offices is, of course, that you see it in the name of the office that I am the head of, Service Center for International Relations. The expectation is that we service everybody. We service the students, we service the staff, we service our own higher management. And to some degree, this can be tiring in some cases because the servicing that is expected of us is not necessarily the service that we talked about before, that is based on acknowledging differences and trying to make a person who is foreign feel at home. But it's an expectation for a service that, for example, an academic has tried everything that there is to do in order to solve, I don't know, regarding a visa issue, for example, and they've gotten to the end of their abilities, and then they're sending it to us, and if we're not able to solve the visa issue, then we haven't performed service as required. So this is a bit of a bother, I would say, but in how far we can enter the field as an international office and solve the commercialization of education. This is something that I have to admit I also didn't think about it a lot, but also ad hoc I would not know how to solve it.
I don't think that, and you're right, it's not our job to solve the problem, but from the start I said, internationalization has to be viewed as a resource, including as a financial resource for the sustainable development of universities. So viewing education as a means to financial gain for institutions is not necessarily bad if that strategy for internationalization drives academic excellence. So if it's coupled with international partnerships that does innovative research, if it's coupled with internationalization of the curriculum to bring the results of that high-end research into education, then of course having an inclusive internationalization policy, I mean, it's up to us to drive it, but it's up to the management of the universities to implement it and to make sure that those two are balanced, But yeah.
Just to a short reply. So in terms of a system that is and a system that is based on tuition, which perhaps is also, or in many cases, is not that affordable. If you look at the North American system, I had a professor once who and he used a metaphor to explain to me why neither one is super. Because he said in the one, so in the European one, you somehow send everybody like ducks in a pond, and you see who is going to, be able to swim. And those are then the excellent ones. In the North American one, you pick you have a lot of ducks, and you pick the ducks out of the whatever group that you have, and just the ones that you picked, you put in the pond, and they're supposed to perform in an excellent manner. But neither one is that inclusive, that diverse.
Yeah, in our conversation, Beatrice, you told me about the barriers that maybe Spain and Spain's government is raising to international students, and that might be connected with commercialization of universities and education. Can you please?
I think that internationalization and globalization at this point are quite linked. And it also changes from country to country. So, for instance, in Spain, tuition fees are not free, even in public universities. Students still pay, and I must say that after the 2008 crisis, when I was studying in the university, tuition raised like 400%. I remember I still paid my master's for 1,000 euros, and that would be absolutely impossible right now. It must be like 8,000, so in a public institution. But even if there are tuition fees for every student, we do not have overseas fee. Every student pays the same. So if we have a student that comes from Romania or from China, students pay a fixed amount, even if they're national, for the public institutions, and the same happens for private institutions. I believe that the problem has come because the government wants to give students, Spanish students in this case, the reassurance that they will not get a shortage of places in the public universities. I think that's their fear. Because funnily enough, the new law for education that was promoted in 2023 includes the European universities, and they also include the necessity of internationalization for the Spanish universities, private and public. So I think the main problem has come that the new exam that they want to promote. They include in the law that there is going to be an exam. In Spain, we all take a public exam before we access the university, and depending on that grade, together with the grade that we receive in the bachillerato, in the baccalaureate, then we have the final grade that will decide what is the place that we have in the university. And they said that the students that come from other systems have an advantage over the Spanish students because they do not have to take that exam. So what they want to do is sort of create a new exam that replaces that. The main concerns, at least from the Conference of Rectors of Spanish Universities, have come from the fact that the exam was initially going to be in Spanish, about Spanish history and any other subject. As you can imagine, an international student would have probably not studied their years before the university. So it's not an equalizer. In the end, it has a perverse effect because students would have to study more Spanish and more subjects that they probably would not need to go to the university or they would have not studied before. Now imagine a student, for instance, who wants to go to a private institution in Spain and study, I don't know, pharmacy in English. Are you going to ask that student to take a test in Spanish when that person is not going to study Spanish, about Spanish history when they are science students? That really doesn't make much sense. So that is the conversation that is going on with the government. And happily, the universities have made them get into their senses, and they are still evaluating how the test is going to be. What we want to be is a test that will see their abilities. It's more based on abilities of the student and not more on basic knowledge about something that they would just have to study, which for us makes no sense. So yeah, I think it's a complex issue because it comes from a globalization point of view and also the national perspective. If you look into, for instance, countries as the United Kingdom, which is closing now for international students. I remember when I was studying, the United Kingdom was the star place to go and study. Everyone wanted to go there to study, and now they are closing. Or the Netherlands, for instance, who used to teach everything in English, and now they're starting to go back and teach in Dutch. I think it's a trend that we are seeing and has to do not only with education. I think it has more to do with the globalization and the new ways of looking at the world. And the education is suffering from it more than, it's not the cause, it's the consequence, I'd say.
Yeah, and this this idea that you've pointed out brings us to another problem with internationalization and with equity and access. How do we make sure, or are we making sure, that students from all socioeconomic backgrounds have access to quality international educational experiences? In case of the University for Continuing Education, how do you make sure that students that are obviously older have access to international education or to mobilities? In case of Romanian students, how do you make sure that students that do not have the ability to pay the co-financing, which is a principle of the Erasmus program? So the Erasmus program was founded on the principle of co-financing. I mean, you get an Erasmus grant to implement a successful mobility, but you have to bring some co-financing to that. I'm gonna start with our answer, because this is something very new and that we are very, very proud as a university to do. Starting in 2025, our institution is giving students that are going abroad with Erasmus mobility studies or placement, even for short-term mobilities, long-term mobilities, an extra grant from the university's budget. So, we try to make sure that everyone has the same opportunity, and we invest money into that equity policy and opening opportunities for all. What can we do, or what is your experience in this area?
I can go. So in our case, as I said before, we are a Catholic institution. So for us, that's a very important point. In our case, we support students not only for the mobility, but also for the whole duration of their studies. Actually, we are one of the institutions that gives more scholarships to students who are in need, so they can have an education at our institution. I actually went to look that to give you the exact number, because I didn't have it before. We gave more than 18 million euros in scholarships for the foundation. This includes, of course, the 4 universities. But yeah, it's a high number, I think. And we have different types of scholarships for students. So we have some that are based on merit. If the student comes and have more than 8/10, they may receive a scholarship if they apply for that. But we also have scholarships for students who are in need. We have 2 types of scholarship for students with special needs that they can apply for. And we also have a support system for students who may need some extra support, may it be psychologically or of any other type. Another thing that we try to support are also athletes. Funnily enough, we have a scholarship for students who are high-level athletes and who need that extra support to be performing at the same time that they are studying. And we collaborate with 2 foundations very closely. We have one thing that are the Ángel Herrera Awards. Ángel Herrera was our founder. And one of the awards was given last year to the ONFE Foundation. If you are not familiar with the ONFE, ONFE is the foundation for the visually impaired in Spain. And we work very closely with them in many projects. One of them is a COIL that has been going on for some time. In architecture, Ana Maria, actually, you would like to know about the project. And another one is the PRODIS Foundation, who works with people with Down syndrome. And they also received that prize. And actually, it's one of the providers, when we purchase like the typical presents that we give to our partners, those are one of the suppliers. So I think it's quite embroidered into our system to try to help those in need. Of course, we still are a private institution and our fees are high, but we try to go the extra mile and help as much as we can.
Yeah.
Well, I will continue with the University for Continuing Education, CLEMS's approach to equity. And before I do that, just a short bracket, because already access to university is not equitable. And if you have gotten here, then our job is to make it as accessible and equitable as possible. But unfortunately, it's still not like this, that everybody has access to higher education. I don't think in any of our countries, independently from their background. But when they get to university and they've succeeded in this, then we do also have a system in place. In the most important feature of the system is that we would like our students to continue working while studying. So the idea behind academic continuing education or university level continuing education or university level lifelong learning at our university is that you don't have to stop working at that age of around 40 in order to improve your academic degree or get your first academic degree. Our study model is built in such a way that you can work in your regular job and study next to your employment. And this is, I think, the most attractive feature. Of course, we have a stipend system, of course. And in terms of mobility, we use the Erasmus program, but also own programs. For example, we have a program for PhD students where we invest our own funds, our university funds, in order to make it possible for them to go abroad to destinations that are not covered by Erasmus, for example. But in principle, the idea would be that you don't have to stop working and lose your income while you are studying. And how do you make this possible in terms of mobility? We offer mainly short-term mobility, which is made in the meantime possible by the Erasmus program with a virtual element for students who cannot take part in a long-term semester mobility. So if students become mobile, they have access to funds for short-term mobility to go abroad. But yes, this does not solve the issue of access to university.
Yeah, it doesn't. But you both mentioned virtual education, COIL, and blended mobilities within the Erasmus program that have a short-term physical component and a virtual component. But I also think that virtual education, VR, and including a lot of online learning can give students access to education, international education, as long as, from my point of view, that is coupled with an actual physical mobility or physical presence in a partner university abroad. I mean, I'm gonna ask you for your opinion, but from my point of view, to have a truly immersive international education means to get into physical contact with cultural differences, with other students' perspectives on life, with different ways of teaching from professors from abroad. So that's also very important. But this online or virtual component that, for instance, the Commission is asking as a mandatory thing for bachelor or master degree students is also important, right?
Definitely. So coming back to the physical component, yes, I utterly agree. So there is, for me, there is a big difference between mobility and exchange. So if we talk about sitting in a virtual room like we do now, this is for me an exchange, a virtual exchange that we're having. Would Beatrice and myself be in Alba Iulia? This would be a mobility experience, where, of course, after we finish our talk, we would have to go eat. We would have to find a hotel to sleep in, perhaps, because, or no, if not, we go to an airport. So we have to interact with a lot of people on the way there, on the way back, and while we're there. Our virtual exchange now is just us sitting in front of the computer, maybe dealing with a couple of technical problems of our own or of our partners sitting on the other side of the screen, but there is no kind of interaction in terms of on top of it. So we're just talking to each other virtually, and that's where it starts and that's where it ends. I don't learn much about everything that surrounds Dani in Alba Iulia. I don't learn much about about the things that surround Beatrice. Are you in Valencia or in Madrid at the moment?
Unfortunately, in Madrid.
Unfortunately for you, maybe, but I would love to be in Madrid. I've never been, so yeah.
You have to choose between.
And in terms of physically moving, I mean, there's people saying, younger people mainly, but even older people who work with computers, this is an outdated thing. Like they used to say when the TV came out and Netflix came out, the book is an outdated thing. But these things are not that outdated. If you want to know why, then read Goethe, for example. I mean, it's a much older idea, but the idea of learning, and that's where we can come back to education and internationalization and how they go hand in hand. The idea of learning, the word theory, theoria in Greek, the word theoria is etymologically comes from the word observation, looking at something. And you cannot do this observation and looking at something selectively by sitting in front of a computer. You can only do theoria in the classical sense by moving from the place that you're used to, your everyday place of life and of living, to another place. Only then are you distanced enough, the Greeks say, from your everyday life and are able to observe new things and encounter new things. And this we cannot do virtually. This is because I'm still in my place of my everyday life here in front of the computer, even though I'm interacting via the internet and via the computer with YouTube. So I'm not getting rid of bits of my daily life in order to be free enough to observe anything. And even then, what should I observe? I see you on a screen. It's nothing new. I do that every day. I talk to people on the screen. So I will stop my philosophy. But yeah, I am all for physical mobility. And the virtual part, yeah, you can use it to prepare for the physical mobility, or if you know each other very well anyway, like we do in our consortium, to follow up on it.
But I'd say I completely agree with Ana Maria with everything she has said. I think virtual mobility or virtual exchanges, as we are calling them, are important as an extra layer because it can also take you to places where you probably cannot afford to go or you have time to go. For instance, we are discovering that quite organically, the virtual exchange in our university is moving towards South America. Like the majority of our professors, if you let them choose, they will go with a partner that shares their language, shares some traits with them culturally, so on so. So they would go with people from Latin America. But they still learn that even if we share so many things, there are others that are completely different. And also students learn that in order to collaborate with people who are in other parts of the world, it's another time there. So you need to actually adapt to how to work with those students. And you also need to know that they communicate in a different way, even if they speak your same language. That are some words that you cannot say because they mean a different thing. So that they also get that little bit of international experience, even if it's through some short exchanges. And of course, when they go abroad, whether they go to Latin America or they go to Europe, now they know that what they had for certain, it's not so true, but maybe things are different or they need to be extra, attentive.
Yeah.
And in our case, it has been very useful for our students. I can say that more and more students actually decide to go to Latin America because they met a partner and they want to go share with their colleagues that they were in. Other professors also are starting to do research or they have been invited to conferences in Peru or in other countries and they were so proud of it because they were able to go and share some research. So I think that it's completely different, but they both are an added value to the institution's professionalization strategy.
Yeah, earlier in our conversation, Ana Maria was saying that when we were talking about commercializing education, I was saying, well, this is happening for a long time in Canada or in the United States. Well, that's actually normal. Internationalization has started as a research topic in Canada, in Australia, in the United States. They are way before us, before Europe or whatever, when it comes to internationalizing education and offering education to international students. And that's even more important or more obvious for Romania, which is a very late newcomer when it comes to attracting international students. We had, during the communist regime, very special relation with Arab countries. They were coming to Romania to study engineering, agriculture, petroleum studies, and mining, extracting, and so on, medicine. But since then, we are a latecomer to this trend. And what I find very good with virtual and online learning is that it can become a marketing tool, and this is from something that we have done at UAB starting in 2025. We have a program called Global Gateway UAB, where we offer online courses like online micro-credentials for students that are coming or from countries that we actually want to have students from, African countries, Latin American countries, developing countries that are trying to find where to go in Europe to study. And it is a marketing tool to offer them online micro credentials. So you can see that there is opportunity in that as well. we've covered a lot of a lot of topics together, and there are even more and more topics that I would like to cover. I have 4 more pages of questions and things to talk about, but we don't have enough time to do that. But I would like to address one more criticism or risk when it comes to internationalization, especially for developing countries. It is sometimes viewed as a brain drain. I mean, how do you ensure that both countries gain from the exchanges? How do you ensure that you transform this brain drain where your young are going abroad to study and they are staying there after their studies? How do you transform it into brain circulation? How do you make sure that they come back and their expertise is used to develop your own countries? That's something that maybe it's not addressed by our offices, but it should be addressed by higher education generally, right?
It's a very, very tough question. And in terms of University for Continuing Education camps, it was, so when the university was founded in 1995, it was founded with the idea that it would service the Danube region. So the Danube region would include Romania, would include Hungary, would include the countries from ex-Yugoslavia. So mainly countries where people come to Austria from in order to find a better life and better jobs. And sometimes through education here, where they stay afterwards. There's so Austria is a very attractive place for students from these countries for a variety of reasons. It's not too far. It has sort of a solid system in terms of brain drain, so retaining the people who come to study here and in jobs. And this should have been from the beginning something that should have been taken into consideration. It is taken into consideration at the level of the Danube Rectors Conference, where the University for Continuing Education camps is very present. It has been very present in the last couple of years, where pretty much the same countries' rectors come together and discuss this kind of issues. And as far as I understood, the terminology has changed also a little bit in the last couple of years. So you went from brain drain, so taking away the good brains from countries in ex-Yugoslavian countries, sort of from Romania, and bringing them here to Austria for careers, to brain circulation. So, okay, you took some, but you also gave some. And now there's this new idea of brain retention. So how do you keep everybody here? Without, but you know, if we keep going like this, it's like building a fence and saying, okay, Austrians is for Austrians, and whatever happens to the rest happens to the rest. Yeah, how do you deal with it? Like, again, I didn't put much thought into it in terms of my professional life. As somebody who is, well, I am brain drain. I can only say that it's not that unattractive for me at this age now, where I have stopped building I'm finished building my career and my family, so the kids are quite old enough that I'm able to move around and not disturb their lives. I'm not that scared of the idea to go back to Romania, which is my country of origin. I don't consider Canada or Austria, even though I lived most of my life in those countries. I don't consider them my countries of origin. The only thing that makes it impossible for me to go back to Romania is in order for the kids to stay here and for me to be able to finance them is the salary, which is again not a question of education, it's a question of market. As long as you have poorer countries in the EU, or as long as you have poorer countries worldwide, of course, those who have the chance and to have the possibility or the stipend or whatever will try to go there where it's richer and where you can make a better life for yourself and for your family, because you usually don't just go for yourself. Usually, if it was me, I would move to Romania, stay in my house, and I don't know, look at the horses and enjoy the internet. But I would like, my life is half over. I would like my kids to have a good life, to have not miss much, not even in surplus, but not miss anything. And as long as Romania is not offering those things, as a mother, as a parent, I cannot, I will stay brain drained. So I'm sorry for mixing up personal stuff. Professionally, it's hard to come to a solution. I'm sure that there are some, but since I didn't think about them, this is my answer.
It's for me. It's I'm personally happy that we can have this conversation and mix our personal experience with our professional view and professional experience. That's the whole point of this kind of conversation and this podcast. Beatrice, what's your take on it?
Well, I always looked at it as a double-sided sword, sort of saying, because Anna Maria put it very, very well with her personal example. How are you going to tell an individual who has done by himself or herself so well and is already included in a society and has already received the education that they have to leave? I know that there are some countries that include in the visa students can stay for the length of their studies and after they have to return. But I think it's a very complex problem. I remember when I finished studies, it was a huge time crisis here in Spain. Unemployment here in Spain is usually very high, especially for young people. And at that time, it was like 50% of people under 30 were unemployed. So we used to joke saying that there were 3 professional opportunities: sea and airplanes. So you could leave the country in those 3 ways. And there are many people who did not return, and they are my age. A lot of people who are working in the UK or who are still in Switzerland or other countries. And of course, that was a huge brain drain for Spain. But how are you going to tell those individuals that they have to come back? I know there are some countries, Portugal, for instance, have been doing some policies trying to recuperate those workers with taxes, redemptions, and so on. But I think that's a very broad problem that at the end of the day comes to personal decisions of individuals, and they all have to decide what's best for them if they have families, or for instance, if they plan to go back to their countries to be with their parents or their elders. That's also another decision that Ana Maria and I were speaking briefly before the podcast. So that's another topic that I think for us in international education is difficult to cover. We can try to provide for the students who have the best chances, and then at the end of the day is their goal.
Yeah, that's quite obvious. the question is about generally what to do with that, but because Ana Maria from her experience talked a bit about Romania, there are trends here as well. So one of the main problems that Romania had, for instance, in faculties of medicine, was that we were offering education in medical science, and a lot of our graduates were leaving abroad. One of the things that has changed in the last years was that we increased their salaries, and Ana Maria very well pointed out, if you want me to work here and have the same living standards that I'm used to, or that my children have gotten used to, then you have to pay me fairly. So one of the things that was done was this. But I would like to think, but I'm always the optimist. I would like to think that actually internationalization is the answer. Actually, ensuring academic excellence is the answer for a whole lot of problems like that. When you as an institution see the transformative power that international collaboration has, that as students see the ways that an opportunity to study abroad opens your future in ways that you can't even imagine, that has a lot to become an answer to this kind of issue. Because, you know, you increase, this is a reality, you increase economic standards and living standards as you increase the quality of your graduates and the quality of your education. This is, as I said in the beginning, the first edition of International UAB Podcast. When we started this effort, I wanted to make sure that we are going to have an inspiring conversation about all stuff international, and with the personal experiences that Ana Maria and Beatriz shared, from my point of view, we've done that. What we are going to try to do with the next editions is to make sure that the message was loud and clear with this one, and that is that your future has no borders. Ana Maria, Beatriz, thank you very much for being part of our efforts, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for the conversation. Have a good day.
Mulțumim. Pa, pa.
Bye.